Yeah. Ha ha ha. What up, what up, what up, what up? Yeah. Welcome back. My name is Felix C. Arroyo, and this is the JMC Podcast, where we maintain focus and stay continuous through all 4 seasons. I am back. JMC is back. It's been a very long 2 weeks since I've sat here and introduced an interview, but I needed that time, and I hope, in the meantime, you've been enjoying the podcast with the other episodes, catching up with me on socials, and what have you, just the whole shebang. I hope you're all doing well. I'm doing good. I have a lot on my plate, but who doesn't? But I'm learning to manage, and I'm enjoying the grind. There's a lot of things popping off with the podcast, and the hard work is paying off. Once again, thank you all for those that have reached out just to let me know that they're enjoying it, they're watching it, they're listening. You can watch me on YouTube like you are right now, or you can listen wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. There's a lot going on, and I'm excited, and I am even more excited to introduce this week's guest. I sat down and talked with Marie Cleaves Rothacker, who is the owner of Move It Dance Studio. It's a boutique dance studio in Lancaster, and I was following her on socials like I predominantly do with all of my guests prior to interviewing them, getting a vibe. And she's got a lot going on, and she commented on an interview I did, I'm pretty sure with LaRock Hudson. Shout out to LaRock. And I told her I'd love to interview you. She was on, so we scheduled this back in like April, May, somewhere around there. So nonetheless, she showed up, she sat down, she apologized ahead of time because, she said she's going to be loud, and I said that's fine, because I can work with that energy. That's my favorite type of energy, because then I feel comfortable being me. If you know Marie, she's a firecracker, and she's a joy to talk to. So much energy. The vibes were real and strong. She's so positive, and she's got a great story. We're talking about a woman who's grown up with biracial parents. Her father from Honduras, her mother's Irish. She's got this, interesting dynamic of where do I belong, and then finally being like, I know who I am, I belong where I want to be, and making her footprint. So what else is there to say other than I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope you are enjoying the JMC podcast. Nonetheless, let's just get right into it. This is Marie's journey, and these are the German Chronicles. Let's go.
Been on the show,
Yeah.
So it's really cool to get to.
Who are you familiar
be
with
a part.
on the show?
LaRock,
Okay,
and Fran. I work with Fran at the Community Foundation.
Okay,
and
yeah.
Shug, because we did Move It. We were one of the vendors that
Okay.
let me remind her, and
Oh, okay, cool.
yeah. So it feels like, I don't know. Did you interview Evita too?
I did, but it was Zoom.
Oh, okay.
So I'm looking, that was last
remember.
season. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to, hopefully I want to reach back out to Evita if you're listening, and
Evita.
and get her in
live?
person.
You didn't tell me we were live.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I said
need
we're
to put
turning
on my
everything
stage
on.
face.
Yeah. We're live, but we're not live because
Yeah.
this can be edited.
Like warm up. Yeah.
Yeah. No one's
you make
watching.
me sound
right
real
now.
good.
So thank you again. Scheduling and getting people in has been a little easier for me this season as opposed to previous seasons, and reaching out to people. So like I said, the last minute, somebody got COVID, had a guest in, and I said,
going around again.
I said, yeah. And I was just like, please rest, because I had it 3 weeks ago.
Oh, you
And it was the first time I ever got it.
Ooh, you were lucky.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. I made it
twice.
3.5 years. And I was like, oh wow, this really is different.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So nonetheless, for the past few weeks now, I've been much better and
Good.
energized. So thank you so much
Yes.
for
Thank
joining
you.
me on the podcast. We set this up at the end of last season around spring.
I
think
know. I was
reached
trying to
out.
remember. Yeah.
Maybe it was towards the end of the spring. And I've been following you on socials for a while.
Oh, cool.
Move It. I think you commented on. I can't remember who it was now because I was trying to go back and figure it out. But you
Yeah.
had commented on somebody that I was sharing their journey, and I started following you through
Oh,
there.
cool.
So let's start with Move It
Okay.
because I've been getting hip to it a little bit more, and I was refreshing today while I was at work. I was going through your website. I was I don't like doing too much research because I like
Your
to
method. You like to fill it out. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I like to kind of like let the conversation go, but I'm really, really intrigued in what you're doing here.
Yeah.
So talk to me about what it is you're doing.
Yeah, Move It is always growing and changing. Move It was my first baby, and then I had a real live human baby 9 months after I opened my first location.
Okay.
Almost 9 years ago. So, my background is in ballet. I'm realizing now that I have an 8 and 6-year-old that most 6-year-olds do not plan out their life, and then actually like get pretty close to falling through.
Yeah. Right.
So anyway, I was a weird kid, and I was obsessed with dance and obsessed with ballet, and that was kind of the path that I set forward for myself from a really young age, and grew up in Stevensville, Michigan, which is like I think it has an actual like traffic light now, but
So
it was like a 4-way stop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was right across the lake from Chicago. So anyway, so we had some level of culture, sort of.
Yeah.
Lots of people from Chicago had like houses on the lake and stuff like that. But anyway, I eventually went to performing arts high school, boarding school in North Carolina when I had just turned 16. And from the age of 11, I had gone away every summer. So this was like my life.
Yeah.
And a lot of things happened. I ended up getting really close to my goal of dancing professionally, and I had a contract when I was 17. But the mental toll of the ballet world, people don't realize, like when Black Swan came out however long ago, I was like, that girl is weak. That's nothing. Like she would, like people are like, is the ballet world really like that? I'm like, it's so much worse. Like you have no
it's
idea.
worse.
Oh yeah.
Because that's a pretty morbid movie.
I know it is. I mean, like the weird, like horror stuff.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
That is not as much, but like the pressure and the perfectionism and all that other kind of stuff is just really toxic. And all of as any performer, most of your power, you're just waiting for someone to tell you you're good enough. You know what I mean?
Sure, yeah.
And that affects you when you're like growing up in that world and constantly being told you are not. So anyway, there was a long circuitous journey to opening Move It, but I basically I quit dancing, when I was 18. I had an identity crisis, and I've tried to quit dancing like 20 times since then.
The identity crisis was because of your distaste for ballet, or no?
It was... I didn't know who 17. I was apart from that world. I didn't know who I was apart from that world.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and also, the reason why I was so committed was because I love it. Because I love dance in general. That doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
So Move It grew out of really lots of years of me trying to figure out how dance and movement fit into my life and what it looked like and how it could look different than whatever idea I had set out for myself when I was 6 years old.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah.
And it's really always been about bringing the beauty of the dance world and not all of the bullshit.
Yeah.
And so I developed my own like bar fitness class. Do you know what bar fitness is?
No.
It is ballet-based fitness. So you use a ballet bar, and it's my brand Move It Bar is a little bit more dance based, and every single exercise goes with the song, is choreographed to the song. So the class flows a lot more like a dance class, and gives people a feel for, like, we secretly teach people rhythm and coordination and stuff through the class. And that was the big thing that we started with. And then I had babies, and then we expanded. We had a second location. Then we had to close our Lancaster location because the building was sold to be torn down. And then it's just been, and then we had finally opened up a downtown location again in mid-January 2020.
Yes.
And you might remember something happened in March of 2020.
Yeah. This comes up often.
I know. I feel like we're all still like I feel like I'm just now at the point where I can start to digest.
Yeah. I think I felt the same way when I was just alluding to the fact that I had COVID 3 weeks ago. And I was kind of like thinking like, wow, it took 3.5 years. And then I kind of like had to think like we're able to now kind of look back at that.
Right.
And I hate to say it. I don't mean to be inconsiderate or tone deaf, but you kind of look back at that like, oh, yeah, that was really hard. Like, yeah, that was actually a pretty fucking devastating moment.
It was.
And
still is.
For all reasons. People not taking it seriously. People taking it very seriously. The government, this, that, and the third, everything shut down. Mm-hmm. You know how you were there.
I was there.
So people who had businesses or ventures or dreams, and you literally just opening up your Lancaster, I mean, it's kind of like on the nose a little bit when it comes to irony, when it's just like, wow, really, like Murphy's Law, this is happening right now.
Yes.
How like what was going through your mind? Because at that time we didn't know what was going on as far as COVID.
Yeah, it was interesting. So really with this expansion to Lancaster, it was like the first time that I felt like it was like the riskiest opening that I had taken on with Move It, mostly because my studio in Manheim Township was really positioned to sell at that point. You know, we were successful. We had expanded services, and
that was your first location.
No, that was my second one.
Oh, that was your second. So your first one was Lancaster.
My first one was Lancaster, but then this is confusing. Okay. Yeah, then the building got sold.
It's all good. I'm with you.
And then we only had Manheim Township, and then I'm like, I was always looking for a space, so that we could have 2 locations again. So anyway, and it was also the one kind of big business decision that my husband was like, "Why are you doing this?"
Okay, and.
You know he shouldn't have said that.
Did that light a fire under you?
I was like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why are you doing that? It was not a good idea. Anyway, so the point is I got really obsessed with making it happen. That was, maybe he was just like trying to motivate me, but I know
that's what he was doing.
He's not that shrewd, but
what's your husband's name?
Andrew.
Andrew, that's what you were doing.
Yeah, Andrew, thanks. Thanks. Don't regret it at all. So it was like, and it was the first time I borrowed money for the studio. Like we always ran really lean, and I kind of like did everything administratively and taught a lot and developed class. I developed a teacher training. Like it was all very in-house and hands-on. And, I was just getting to the point where I was like, what's the next step? And then I thought the next step was, okay, let's expand, because what else am I going to do? And also my husband doesn't really want me to do it. So I'm going to do it and I'm going to show him, whatever. Yeah. So anyway, so we opened that studio mid-January 2020. It felt like this was the dream situation. It felt like, it had really good energy, and I was really excited to focus more on dance and like bringing live performance in just it's a studio atmosphere, but we can do like works in progress, like low key performances there and stuff. And I wanted to start creating work again and whatever. And then when COVID hit, I was actually a part of this like boutique fitness coalition. And so there were I had a heads up that it could be
pretty bad
because they're an international organization. So they were like, they had studios in China that they're like, this is what's happening here. And it's real.
Okay.
But here, remember, everybody was like, whatever, like
Yeah.
it's over there, it's not here. And so the 2 weeks leading up to the shutdown, I was scrambling around trying to figure out how to do this in my studio. You know what I
wow,
mean?
okay.
Like I was like, we're probably going to have to go virtual. I need to like figure out how to like a camera, a microphone, a music. Like I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
But I was like bubbling around the studio and everybody's like, what is wrong with her? Like this woman is neurotic. And I'm like, well, just in case, just in case. It's fine. Everybody's fine. Keep going, and my teachers are so sweet and they're just like, okay, Marie, it's one of her things. But what that allowed us to do was we went virtual overnight. So like March 13th, I think it was 13th or 14th, we sent out an email and we're like, okay, we're going virtual. And then everything was officially shut down like 2 days later.
Okay.
But then we ended up closing what had been our main location in Manheim Township in the fall of 2020. I mean, it's just, we did a rebrand. We developed a whole, online video library. I got a videographer friend to help me out. And, we launched ethical shopping, like online store during COVID. So we were doing a ton of things, along with all the things that as a small business owner, you don't like to do, which is like emailing the landlord all the time being like, I don't know how I'm going to pay you.
Yeah.
What can we work out? And I had never had to do that in the life of my business. I was really lucky that up until that point, I had always been, able to cover my costs and pay myself a tiny bit. It wasn't a ton, but I was always able to do that. It was never a matter of like, how am I going to pay my people? And it turned into, how am I going to pay my people?
Sure.
And that was a really hard situation to deal with.
How do you go about, I mean, like, I'm kind of getting the vibe like you're a go-getter here, right?
What do you mean?
Is that because
this is why I'm drinking water, not coffee.
Because it's like, how do you, you get hip to the possibility of what's about to happen, which was COVID.
Yeah.
And you're already adapting, but you alluded to doing the administrative as well as the classes, as well as, so you're wearing a lot of different hats.
Yes. And I was primary caretaker for my kids at that time too.
Okay.
So yeah,
how do you do that? Like, how are you, is that something that are you the kind of, because I'm that kind of person where it's like, and my wife is too, where let's do it.
You just do
until we can't.
Yeah.
And in our own way, like there's things where I'm like the podcast for perfect things. I do all of it. And it's kind of like, it's a lot of work and I can't wait till I get a team, but I kind of like doing it on my own too. So it's like,
it's like a ritual. It's like, to be in the details sometimes.
Yeah. Is that the same? Is that where you're coming from with Move It as far as doing so much?
Yeah.
It has to be a certain way.
Yeah. I've thought about this a lot because I think a lot of times, especially with small business owners, it's like the founder syndrome thing where they can't let go of anything because it's like, oh my God, it has to be my way or the highway.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily, now people listening to this who know me may think that is the truth. It's the truth a little bit. He's taking a step. He's like, let's see how she comes out of this one.
As soon as you said it, I was like,
you can edit that part out.
Maybe you heard something already. I don't know. I'm just getting to know you. You're so sweet.
I'm a really nice person. Please edit out all the things I tell you to edit. That'd be great. No, I mean, yes, like I know how I want things done, but also I never wanted to do all the things and overwhelm myself. The thing is, I'm kind of built that way, I think a lot from my parents. So my dad grew up in Honduras, born and raised Honduras, came to the U.S. in high school, and really is like self-made. He was privileged that he was able to come here legally, that he had an education and all of that he spoke English. He learned English from a young age. But, he made his own way. And then my mom, she's like Dutch, Irish, mixed, whatever,
Gotcha.
from rural Michigan, grew up on a dirt road across from a landfill, you know what I mean? And both of them they're still they just do it. They just do it. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what was modeled for me. And it's served me well. And it's also been kind of my worst enemy, which you might relate to sometimes.
1000%.
So my stress response, and this became very, very obvious to me during COVID, is hyperactivity. You know what I mean? It's like, I got to do. I got to save the world. I got to like everything I just become hyper focused, and I'm really good under stress because of that. Like I can perform under stress. That helped me in ballet too. Right.
Yeah.
I used to have teachers that would just be screaming at me constantly, and you're doing this, very complicated, choreography or whatever it is. And, with people screaming at you the whole time and your body's hurting and you know what I mean? And you're a teenager, like that kind of thing affects you if you stay in that. And I kind of thrived off of that in a way. And in some ways, I think I know how to function under those circumstances. However, doing all the things that we did, and then we did a rebrand and redid our website over COVID and everything. And it was like literally me, my mom, and my sister redid it all in like a couple of like maybe a month.
Wow.
Because my sister's a designer and my mom's a programmer. So anyway, this is like a family culture thing.
Yeah. Again,
it's a good thing and a bad thing. And what ended up happening to me is so many years of going, finally caught up with me in a different way, I would say, than it had in the past. Like I've always dealt with like anxiety, depression, perfectionist tendencies, blah, blah, blah. But what happened this time was my body grew and my belly grew, and I'm teaching fitness on a camera every day all of a sudden. And, things were starting to shift in a way that I think the universe was like, this is the thing that's going to make her finally pay attention. Like if she starts to get fat around her middle, she's going to start to be like, okay, what do we need to do? As body positive as I am, like I had different expectations of whatever of myself, So that's been an interesting journey. And what I really ended up having to do was I was having like health issues, just like weird things, and ended up having to really just like stop. Like I have, a small administrative team that works very part-time. And I think it was in 2021, I was just like, I'm done with the studio. Goodbye.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I was like, I don't care. Like, I can't do it anymore. And I knew that I was empty when it was, it was like we were on some, Zoom live stream class, because at one point we were running outdoor classes at both locations, indoor classes with masks at both locations, and live stream. Like it was crazy, right?
Yeah.
We closed the other location, but we were still doing outdoor, indoor, and live stream. And I was a tech person.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, there's a lot of hats here, Marie.
Well, and also this was like before vaccines were just coming out, remember? So I didn't want other people to help me because I was worried about, it was like all that stuff. I remember putting the stickers on the floor to separate, the people around the studio and the air cleaners and everything. So it was like I was doing all the things, but there was one time I was teaching a class and a client was like, I can't hear the music. And like in my mind, I was like, I don't fucking care. And then I was like, I might be burned out now.
This is me burning out.
And I was just like, my eyes just did their stare and their double blink that they do when I'm perturbed. And I was like, okay, I need to figure this out. So I was really lucky that, my team was like, listen, let us carry some things for a while. And, we can't take the financial burden off of you, but we can like sub your classes. We can take care of administrative things, whatever.
Well, that's cool.
And so many of my teachers, and even still some of them are like volunteering their time because it's still like a long road to recovery. I had to borrow so much freaking money.
Yeah. Yeah.
to get through pandemic. And it's the same thing. Like when I was in it, I was just like, okay, whatever needs to happen next, boom, 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 done and done, done. Oh, we're not eligible for anything forgivable. Okay, then we do this. Da, 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 da. And now I'm kind of again with the business at the point where I'm like how we're talking about looking back and being like, oh, I did that. Like I did that. I'm proud that we're still here. And also I'm like, I did that. And like now I got to figure out like, what is the way through, you know? It's not like it didn't happen. You know what I mean? And I think, you know, I've had more than one person talk to me and be like, oh, it's so amazing. Like, you know, you kept such a positive attitude. I was like, I was literally falling apart.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I literally look like a different person now. It is what it is. I'm fine with it. And I'm, you know, I feel much more myself spiritually and, you know, everything else. But like, it's not been an easy ride. And everybody's like, but it's over now, right? You know, and everything's fine because like your classes, you got a lot of people in them and whatever. And I'm like, it's not over because, you know, we're dealing with some other things.
Yeah. Well, like you just alluded to earlier, where it's like you had to make these decisions in the moment.
Yeah.
And they made sense and they were the right thing to do. But eventually then things start catching up and you're reminded of those decisions.
Right.
And the hasteness of the decision making really comes to the forefront then when you're like, okay, yeah, fuck.
Yeah.
And it's easy for people to see the bounce back and be like, look at you.
Yeah.
Which is cool. And I would assume that for the most part, it is rightfully so frustrating, but there's also times where maybe do you have to kind of like, you're biting your tongue because people who aren't business savvy or business minded, they don't get that part. And I'm innocently a part of that. I'm starting to learn because of the podcast, the business side of things, and I'm growing very frustrated with it because I just want to be the creative. But I am aware of and hip to like there's things that are going on behind the scenes. The goal is for you to see what you're seeing. Yes. And if it looks like I'm doing good, but please keep in mind this isn't a cakewalk for me.
That's really hard for me because I feel like, so about a year ago, I was like, okay, we need to do another crowdfunding campaign because I don't know, like I can't borrow any more money, you know, and it's not fair to my family. I also have a full-time job that I just started a year and a half ago. I work with Fran at the Community Foundation, which is amazing. But like, you know, it's just like, I can't, you know, I got 2 young kids, man. I like gave up my life for this. Here I am giving up my life for movement again and not always in the healthiest way.
Yeah.
So it kind of manifested in a different way. And I found myself being in this space where I'm just like, how do you, so my whole thing is like my dad's an immigrant, right? So like, he's like super aware of like how you present yourself and how you appear.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, for example, he wanted like these sequins and like, this is like a little too much, but I'm owning it now. He'd be like, you look Latina. And I'm like, Dad, I am Latina.
Let me be.
What more do you need of me? You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm still trying to prove my freaking identity to you. I don't know why I have issues. You're going to edit that part out.
Yeah, sure. It'll be on the extended version.
The uncut.
I'll start a Patreon and you can follow it along there.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, like it's just like, you know, we grew up, we were, you know, in Stevensville, Michigan, there was not a lot of ethnic diversity, believe it or not.
That was one of my questions coming up to you. Okay.
Yeah. So like we weren't far from Benton Harbor, which was like, you know, where most of the Black and brown population lived in that area. But, you know, my dad was always looking at, okay, what is the next step to like both advance his career, but also like create like a better life for our family, right? Like he and my mom had talked about moving back to Honduras after they got married, but that was the early 80s when there was a lot of unrest and a lot of violence and stuff going on in Central America, so they didn't do it.
Okay.
And then, you know, he followed where he could get the jobs and whatever, and always wanted to move us into communities that, you know, ended up being suburban and white.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And then when I was a ballet dancer, it's a very, like I was one of the darkest people, you know, that now it's getting better, but like, you know, I was asked to put on an and I'm like light brown, you know? I was asked to put on makeup to make my skin lighter when I danced in Swan Lake. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like, it's just so in there. So I'm really, really used to a lot of microaggressions to the point where sometimes I can't even identify them.
Okay. Yeah.
Because we were we had like, I think there was an Indian family, there was a Japanese family, there was a Greek family, and there was us, you know what I mean, in that little community. And, then I ended up going to a bunch of different schools and graduating from St. Joseph's High School in South Bend, Indiana, which is like a feeder school for Notre Dame. Excuse me. And Notre Dame's where I did my graduate work.
Oh, wow.
But again, like literally, I was like so eating the whatever, drinking the Kool-Aid. I was like wearing Notre Dame polo shirts and khakis at one point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
I got
I'm like,
you.
I will conform. Like,
Right,
I won't
right.
conform my personality, but like if I wear these clothes, it will make people feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But everybody knew who I was. It didn't fucking matter. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that I've been learning now. But anyway, I don't know where I was going with all that.
No, but I'm
Something
glad
about,
you
like,
brought that up because
validating my
when you
Latinidad.
mentioned, your father had to, coming from Honduras and understanding the situation and the conversation of immigrants coming here and having to conform comes up often on this podcast.
Yeah.
And the conversation also of being of the next generation
first
that
gen.
is
Yep.
aware of what my grandparents did, what my parents had to see, but realizing that we're in a position now where things can be done differently, but we still, black and brown people have opportunities now that weren't there, but there's still situations that take place that remind you. You see what I'm saying? So it's like when you mentioned the polo and the khakis, yeah, it's like that's like it's conditioned in my mind to have it's pretty sad, and I think about it often. Like, why do I talk differently to different people? It's part of it is because you have to get people's attention, and some people, I can't talk to my mom the way I talk to my boys, but
Yeah, we all do it to a certain extent.
But we do to a certain extent. But
Some
then
of us are more aware.
But there's times, right? But there's times where it's like, am I conforming? Am I putting myself in a position
confusing
to be
sometimes.
like, it's super warped.
It is.
And so I can only imagine, like, when you mentioned Michigan, because I knew you were Latina,
Ever
but
heard
I
of the
didn't
Michigan
know.
militia?
I didn't,
Okay. They were trying to murder the governor
I
up
was
in
like,
there.
how does that happen? So how do you come from Michigan? Like, how do you find yourself? Because I thought you were from here. I didn't realize that.
I've been here for 18 years and I'm only 22. So isn't that crazy?
Fucking phenomenal. This is a first for the podcast.
You know, don't look at these roots. Yeah, somehow I've been here for 18 years. I moved here as an adult because, I was still in undergrad because my parents moved here because my dad took a job and he was pretty successful in the corporate world and worked for Exelon Corporation and stuff. And
Okay.
he wanted to move to Bent Creek Country Club when we moved here.
Okay.
And my mom was like, hell no, I don't want people, like, she's like the brown one, even though she's the Irish one, okay? She's like, I don't want people telling me what to wear. I don't want people telling me how I got to do my lawn. I don't want people telling me I can only have one dog. I'm not living in a country club.
Yeah,
I don't even like golf, and I don't like people like that. Sorry, Bent Creek people, because we did have some really good clients from there. They might not be
Maybe
listening.
I will edit that
They
one
might
out.
not be your target audience. No, it's true though. But that's how my mom was, right? But the reason why, again, he wanted that was because, okay, this is where, like some of the newer money is living.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is where I can network, and it's not all bad. I held it against him for a long time.
But it makes sense in his position.
Right.
And you're at the age now where that makes sense. You
Yes,
can see it.
I can see it more, and I understand it a lot differently than I did for a while. But yeah, I mean, Lancaster County isn't that different from where I grew up in Michigan.
Okay.
It's just more people.
Yeah. More people where?
There's more people here.
Get out. In Michigan? Wow.
I told you. There was not a
you're
stoplight.
right. You're right. You did say that. I mean, I understood the humor, but yeah, now I'm seeing how.
I'm serious. That was a literal. That was not an exaggeration.
Everybody had off from school. They celebrated the four-way stoplight being installed.
And so, yeah, it's been a journey to honestly even understanding my identity as a Latina, because most of my life I was stubbornly against having to choose. Like, I thought I had to choose how it identified, right? I mean, you do when you're filling out the form or whatever. I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to put? I'm half white, half brown.
Yep.
There's not a thing for multicultural. Like, there's not a, and so it was like a weird, like, thing that I was on. Like, every time I had to take a standardized test, I would just like be pissed and I'd be like, multicultural, other,
Yep.
And I think one of the things that I didn't realize, and that what like all of the stuff, the great white awakening or the great racial awakening or whatever you want to call it, when all of that was going down, it kind of illuminated a lot of things for me. And I had a lot of conversations with my mom, not as many with my dad, about like, really, it was just this whole thing of like, yeah, you're a Latina. Like, people, it doesn't matter how you think, if your dad doesn't think you're Latina enough, for example,
sure.
Which he still doesn't. It doesn't matter that you were raised around a lot of white people. You know how to talk to white people, and you know how to like wear the polo or whatever.
Yeah.
People still see you that way.
Yep.
It's not a bad thing. It is just a thing to know as you're navigating life, right? And, there were so many things that I was like, but mom, is it really that way? Because I feel like a lot of people see me as more white and da-da-da. And she's like, yeah, maybe they do, but like, people think you're a freaking Latina. And then she's like, and remember this and this and this that you had to deal with, that my sister's lighter complected. She didn't have to deal with it.
Okay.
And so it's been really interesting. And I think it's really challenging for people who kind of like straddle the line that could be like one thing or another, like ethnically ambiguous is what I used to call myself. But now I'm like, I'm Latina, blah, blah, but I still like feel like, is that okay? Because, I've had a lot more privilege than a lot of Latinas and a lot of the Latina community. I don't want to claim hardship.
Sure.
It's that, again, that like work your way, right? So all that to be said, it has been a challenge. And also, I think a lot of how I learned to cope with it growing up was simply not ignoring, but sort of ignoring a lot of microaggressions. And just feeling like, honestly, what I realized is I had internalized it, and I thought there was just something really wrong with me.
Okay.
I'm like, well, none of these mean white girls like me. It must be me.
Okay.
Or they're just mean girls, but I didn't connect the racial element to it. And that is something that has really crystallized for me in the past few years, and especially now, like with my job and being much more just visible in a different way in Lancaster. I always joke that like I couldn't fit in anywhere, so I had to create my own little bubble at Move It that's like my happy place, and it still is.
Yeah.
But now, I'm like in other people's spaces and I'm like, oh, you don't just love me? Why not? I didn't build this, but I built that over there, like you should just like me and respect me.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, there's been some real struggles with that. I will say.
I can appreciate that. Especially when you were referring to, the awkwardness or the inability to feel comfortable claiming being Latina, but also understanding that you've had some privilege. I had my own fair share of that, where I can't speak Spanish or fluently or even understand it. I can if it's slowed down, but I mean, obviously when people are speaking Spanish, it's rapid fire.
Yeah.
And I've had my fair share of that growing up, where it was like, I've never wanted to not claim being Puerto Rican because I'm Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
I had no problem claiming it, but I was often reminded, like, but you?
Are you fully Puerto Rican?
Right, because you sometimes you sound white when you talk.
I know. And it's like, what is white? And
right.
I mean, what is sounding white?
What's sounding white?
I know.
And
it's a whole
like,
thing.
when you get older and you start, like you said, connecting the dots, and you're like, I get it now. I was surrounded, when I grew up, I was surrounded by mostly white kids.
Mm-hmm.
But as I got older, I then found myself around a lot of black and brown kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to find my identity, because you start realizing everything that you were just describing, a lot of other people are going through that black and brown kids.
And they just get it, and you don't even have to talk about it, right?
And you have like your little powwows where you're like, I remember kind of breaking the ice while starting school and having conversations like, oh, my mom wouldn't do that. And someone would look at me and be like, oh, I know your mom's Puerto Rican. I know. And it was all the black girls were like,
right.
Oh, we know. And it was kind of like, we don't have to know each other, but we related just on that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were explaining that, that's the things that I was thinking of was I can appreciate, first of all, your vulnerability in discussing something like that, because it's really easy at the end of the day when you experience things like that. It's easy to just be like, I don't want to talk about it, and then not really claim who you are or look at it that way, and just surround yourself with what makes you comfortable and easy to navigate through social life. And then that obviously gets frowned upon, but the fact that you were able to be like, no, I know who I am.
Yes.
That's cool. A lot of people don't get there.
Yeah. It's still like, excuse me, the thing that I realized too was that there was a little bit of pride built into that, to be like, it was both feeling like I cannot claim the Black experience. It's not the same as a light-skinned brown Latino woman.
Yeah.
I've always done a lot of, when I was an English major in undergrad, and I was always taking African American literature classes and stuff. There weren't any Latin, Latino, whatever,
Sure,
writing and stuff. There was some Pablo Neruda, whatever, but like, so I danced with an African American dance company when I was in Indiana and in school. And one thing that I realized through all of this, it was like there was part of me that wasn't comfortable claiming a racialized experience, because I knew it was so much harder for so many other people, and I was I felt so privileged, right? And it was interesting because I was talking to my mom about this, who is white, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, Marie, you didn't. Not that it was harder, but like, you didn't have anyone to talk to about this stuff. Like, all of your community was white.
Yeah.
The ballet world is super white. Maybe if I would have chosen something else, but like I was, kind of on my own in a lot of ways, and didn't understand a lot of what I was experiencing, because my dad, his way, he claims Honduran and whatever, but like his way of getting through it in the corporate world was like, you put your head down and you just keep going.
Yeah.
And I remember making fun of him one time, and I was like, dude, no matter like what golf you play, what you wear, whatever, like, they're never going to accept you.
Yeah.
I remember saying that to him. And then, when all of this stuff was going down over pandemic, realizing like, damn, that was like the same shit I was doing, having this, bar fitness studio where like 95% of my clientele are privileged white women.
Sure.
I'm literally across the street from a country club. And I really had this moment where I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, and I kind of wanted to blow it all up, because I was like, this is wrong. Like, I need to be doing something more for the cause. I need to be more fully in the work, whatever it was, especially like with racial equity, and felt like I can't do that in this industry, because the fitness industry is very much like the ballet world.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So it's definitely been a journey. And I think also there was a part of me that was like, well, since my dad gave me these advantages of like, whatever, sending me to good schools and stuff like that, since I basically talk like a white gay man, like I can blend, or I haven't had to deal with as much, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, it was like I wanted to feel like I had overcome it within myself.
Yeah.
That like, I don't know. And maybe that was part of, I don't know. It's it gets messy and
I dig it.
Weird in there. You know what I mean? Because then, the couple times in my life where I really felt like I had true community have been when I am with people who are multicultural in some way, right? Like, because a lot of times if I'm just like in like full on, like when I'm around Central Americans, they just like make fun of me because like I'm semi-fluent, but like I don't have the best accent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, I have found that because I really am a melting pot, right? Like I really am both. And like I literally have like, trailer like white folks that I am related to.
Yeah, got you. I got you.
And then my abuelita lived with us. She only spoke Spanish. She was very educated. She was a nurse, but when she came to the U.S. because she didn't speak English, she was treated like, she came here illegally and, was like all the assumptions were made, know?
Right.
So, but one thing that I have started to try to do and be aware of, I feel like I'm kind of coming around, is realizing that, even though it can be really alienating to kind of feel like you have a foot in both worlds and all that other stuff, and there will be people on both sides who tell you, you're not really Latina, or you're not really white, or whatever. I mean, whatever it is, right? Or you're too this, you're too that, you're too dramatic, you're too, you can't be smart and like wear sequins. You can't, all the things, right? I've started to come around after a lot of work to feeling like these unique racialized experiences that I've had, these different worlds that I've moved between, are really an advantage and can be a strength.
Yes.
I kind of was annoyed with it for a long time because I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do?
You were annoyed that you had, but were you annoyed that you had one foot in each world, or more so one foot in that one world where you had that privilege?
Ooh,
because sometimes that's what
true.
it is.
It could be.
Because you mentioned a couple times that I related to where it was kind of like, how can I relate if I didn't have this experience?
Right. Like I didn't grow up in the inner city.
Right.
But I also didn't grow up around any other Latinos.
Right.
Except for in my family. So.
No, but I appreciate that. I was kind of co-signing what you were saying. What it was. That is my two
It's
oldest.
like you feel guilty about like being whiter or something like that.
Or having this experience that kind of like, and I hate to say it, but whitewashes your brown card. Like,
right.
Oh, okay, you're Latina, but there's this asterisk, which is unfortunate because the cards were dealt the way they were dealt. And I tell this to my two oldest, especially my oldest. She'll be 21. My two oldest have their mother is white, and she identifies as Latina, but she receives some backlash from the other side of the family. And I don't want to get too far into that because I respect, my daughter and her privacy. But
right.
I don't know what that life is like because both of my parents were Puerto Rican.
Right.
But I'm empathetic because I didn't have the cliche Hispanic experience growing up. Like my wife is Puerto Rican and she has a lot more cultural things that she can relate to growing up, where I was just kind of like, I don't know. Like I don't know that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think I got to the point for me personally where I was just like, I know who I am and I'm honest about who I am. And I'll never claim to understand certain things, but I know for a fact that I can see it, recognize it, I can empathize with it, and I'm with it. There's a lot of people that claim to be like, I'm supporting you, but You're
They still
supporting
don't
me
see it.
from a position that you don't really see it.
Oh, it's so hard.
I talked to LaRock about this. I think it was LaRock.
Yeah.
When we were talking,
Well,
I was
LaRock
like,
and I went through a big old thing together.
oh yeah? Mm-hmm. Well, talk to me about
No, I'm not.
it. Let's not talk about it.
I don't know what he talked to. I actually didn't get to, I only listened to part of his episode.
I think it was him more so where I was talking about like you're conditioned as black and brown people, we're conditioned to prepare for society a certain way. Mm-hmm. It's just innate in us. And I recognized it more when my two oldest, who were half white, grew up in Hempfield.
Yep.
Okay.
And then you're like, am I doing the right thing? Mm-hmm.
Right. Oh, yeah. You get the double-edged sword. I wanted a better life for my kids. Now they don't
really
have
better?
this experience.
Yeah, all that.
But it's also kind of like there's things that they're not hip to where I'm like, y'all don't see what's going on right now? And they're like, no, what's going on?
That piece, because I was so used to it.
Yeah.
It wasn't that I wasn't aware. I was aware of it when it was being directed at my dad or my abuelita. But when it was being directed at me,
you didn't see it.
Didn't see it with the same clarity. And literally, like, LaRock and I were in a leadership program together this past year, and we both ended up having to leave it.
I kind of remember that coming up. I don't know the details, but I remember him mentioning
and
it. Yeah.
he actually helped me a lot because it was so funny. We would have these text conversations, and I'd be like, yeah, the girl in the group said this, whatever. And he's like, you know what she's doing, right? And I'm like, she's just treating me like all other white women treat me. You know what I mean? Like he literally had to call out even this recently in the past year of like, you are being alienated. You are being made to feel like you are the crazy, out of control brown woman in the group because you're the only brown woman.
Right.
No matter how white you may think you talk or whatever, and this is like racism 101.
Yeah.
What I mean? And I was like, damn it.
Well, especially for a woman, I would think for a woman that it's twice as difficult because
it is.
And I listen to my wife. My wife, I can't tell you how many times she'll say, I have to watch what I say because then I'll be looked at as the crazy Latina or the loud Latina.
Well, and let me tell you, now that I dress a little bit more, whatever, loud with personality, right? And I claim my Latinidad more. Guess what?
What's that?
It gets harder.
Yeah. Go figure.
Isn't that funny? So I think like one thing that I've come to is I'm sort of like, listen, I'm going to put on the damn red lipstick.
Yeah.
I'm going to wear my big earrings and my curly hair because people see, this is the thing that I didn't realize before. People see you no matter, that's the real me. You know what I mean? So like I wasn't trying to cover it up, but I was trying to blend and make I spent my whole life. You were trying to
soften the blow.
Yeah. I spent my whole life trying to make white people feel comfortable
That's what we all do though. That's what I was trying to allude to.
Let me tell you, I am in this like bridge building training right now that's through the what's it called? It's the something I can't remember, but it's a national foundation, community foundation organization, and they sent a couple people from our organization through this training, and I was so pissed on the last training because they keep talking about taking someone else's perspective and understanding that everybody's not the same as you and da 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 da, and I'm like. And then this last episode, this last training workshop, whatever, they had this woman. Yes, she was white. She's a renowned national researcher. And she was talking about how she worked with immigrants. And basically her whole thing was like creating a PR campaign around seeing immigrants as humans rather than as the other, seeing them as one of us is what she said. Okay. Seeing them as one of us, not as the other. And I was like, girl.
Right. What does that mean?
And this was the big light bulb moment for them in their research that, we have to use different words so that, and I'm like, so basically you learned that you need to help white people to understand that other people are human. Like it was
right.
It was so frustrating for me because I'm like, Who did you interview any of the immigrants in this situation? And I asked her that in front of like 200 people. And
what did she say?
Oh, I never thought of that.
Research 101, I guess. I don't know, right?
But that's the thing. That's how it shows up. It's why I'm glad I, do have a master's degree from Notre Dame. So in nonprofit administration, so I can have this job at the foundation, so I can be in those conversations, so that I can, I'm glad I was in the ballet world, so I can feel comfortable in a studio environment and, help people in that way. But it's hard sometimes because I was pissed.
Yeah.
And I didn't. So anyway, and then there's a couple like black people in the group too. And the one black guy's like, Marie is speaking the truth. And I'm like, thank you. I needed that because I was like, this is like this highly esteemed guest. And I was like, have you ever done research on people who grew up in multicultural backgrounds or who have an immigrant background? Because it seems like all of these major, revelations you've had in your research, we all grew up with. Right. We know how to do this shit.
Right.
I didn't say it in that way, but that was like and so what I keep learning, it's like literally over and over again in this training, I'm like, oh, this is literally like how we navigate the world. So what does that mean when on a societal level, organizations who have influence really are trying, that have been used, historically been, run by old rich white people, we'll say, right? Maybe there's change happening, right? But they still have that, history. There are a lot of organizations that are really trying, but I feel like there's only so much change that can happen with that limited perspective.
Right. Until you decide to have conversations with people.
And even like, I think you might need to edit this out too, but just put it in the uncut version. I think until, empowered Black and brown people are in power.
Yeah. No, yeah.
There's only so far an organization or a company or whatever can go. You know what I mean? Because now they also have not had to feel like they've given up their identity to get to that point. And a lot of times people end up having to water themselves down so much to get to that point that, then it's just about, it's not about the bigger cause. And that's fine. I mean, honestly, people need to do what they need to do to make it through the world.
1,000%.
Like, I'm not judging that because,
1,000%.
and even like with my dad, it's like, as much as I make fun of him, whatever, it's like, listen, man, like
he had to do what he had to do.
You had to do what you had to do. So like, you also can't always be carrying the burden of solving racism in every interaction. So it's a balance of being like, how can I take care of myself enough and understand when to engage and when to identify things and when it's not safe to for my own emotional, mental health.
Yeah.
And it's a constant, like this, you know what I mean? And well, it's
no, yeah, I completely dig it.
Even so I went to Beyonce in July.
Okay.
And ever since then I've been wearing red lipstick.
Okay.
And this is my whole thing. I was like, I have been baptized in the spirit.
By the beehive.
I will only wear red lipstick. She is telling me that from this day henceforth, I shall only wear red lipstick. And so I listened because it was Beyonce. You know what I mean? Like, I might have been up in the nosebleeds, but she was speaking to me.
And you were there.
I mean, I was there.
You were there, yeah. No, I appreciate this. And one of the things that I wanted to go back on was when no, but to piggyback off of what you were saying was that it is noble what the generations before us had to do.
Yeah.
And when I said sometimes now you have to do things differently because we're in different positions, this is what I'm talking about, where it's like, I think the main staple through everything that like generations can pass down from immigrants,
Yes.
not even people of color, really. I'm talking about just immigrants across the board, is education is really the biggest tool you can have, because that's the only way you can navigate, like you said, because of your education, you're able to put yourself in these rooms, in these circles. Yeah, it's still not fucking easy.
Yeah.
And you're still dealing with the shit, but you're here.
Yes.
So it's almost like you're making waves in this pool. You have to be willing to do that, make these ripples in this pool, because that's what's going to make generations,
the next generation.
Right? You see what I'm saying?
And it is different, returning back to, so two things. One is that's how the University of Notre Dame started, because the Irish were, and I'm like 25% Irish, but
okay, there you go.
15%, something like that. But anyway, they were like scum, the lowest of the low. You know what I mean? They didn't have institutions of higher education. That is why the University of Notre Dame was started. And I mean, it was all men, of course, when they started. So there's still all that energy. But, I mean, it doesn't feel like that now, right? Like it's this huge institution with all these resources and everything. And it's very white, but it was Irish, like that is the background. So it's just that's a kind of interesting thing to remember. And then the other thing I was going to say is returning back to like, kind of like basically what does our generation do in navigating these things and how that looks different from the generation previous. When I was going through some major struggles with this leadership program that I was telling you about with LaRock, I talked a lot to my dad, and I was just like, dude, like I am like, it's taking me 2 days to recover after every interaction with this organization. I think I need to leave.
Wow. And
I remember being in the liquor store buying wine for myself to self-medicate, which, it's not whatever. People do it, okay? Blah, blah, blah.
Everybody does it.
Health and wellness
That's how I look
can
at
be
it.
a thing, and drinking sometimes to medicate can be a thing, and that's a whole other thing.
We don't judge here. I don't judge.
Yeah, but no, I remember literally being, buying a bottle of wine and on the phone with my dad telling him, I'm like, I don't think I can do it anymore, blah, blah, blah. And I remember he got pissed at me and he said, listen, if I would have quit every time some white motherfucker, he didn't say motherfucker,
yeah,
like, came after me, like, I never would have had a freaking job.
Yeah.
And if you quit that program, you're going to make it hard for every other Black person who comes after you.
Talk about pressure, huh? Mm-hmm. You were like, damn it, Dad, you're right. Why?
I was like, okay, fine. I'll just drink my worries away and stay in it for now.
I'm still drinking.
But I ended up leaving. I know. I ended up leaving. But I remember that moment because I was like, I get it. Like, I grew up with that mentality. I see it all the time. And that's part of the reason why I was always working so hard. It's not just because everything had to be a certain way. It was because I didn't know any other way.
Yep.
And asking for people for help, I fucking hate that.
Yeah.
Being vulnerable, no fun. Receiving whatever, like it's really a struggle for me. And it comes from both the working class white side of my family and the immigrant side of my family.
Yeah.
And, it's very interesting because, as I'm talking with other people, well, they're slightly younger than me, that are, Black and brown in our community and are kind of, you can edit that part out too.
There's a lot of editing
I know,
going on
I'm
here.
sorry. Just give me a red pen. I swear I'm not controlling. But like, I feel like, okay, the younger, like, I feel like we're like, are you like 40s?
I'm 44.
Okay. So I just turned 41.
Okay.
I'm not telling you how much I weigh.
That's none of my business.
But I will tell you how old I am. And I feel like there are a lot of like 20 and 30s black and brown people, especially in the Lancaster community, but just really even nationally, who are like, fuck the system.
Yeah.
Who fucking cares?
Yeah.
You already have had to be oppressed just by coming out into this world looking like you do. You don't need to pay you don't need to like bow down to the white man or whatever. So it's really interesting because we're kind of like in that in-between generation that's like, okay, like my dad or my grandparent or whatever, like we saw what they had to go through, right? And then we're trying to bridge the gap between that and like, okay, I'm 40 something. I do need a job.
Yeah.
I do need like
No, yeah.
Like how can I still help lay groundwork and create space for the next generation that's going to come through and blow shit up, and hopefully they can, you know what I mean? But and still, like be true to who I am. I'm not a person. I like to try to make everything work.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing and a bad thing, and I think that's part of what we do generationally too.
Well, the passing of the baton isn't easy.
Right.
Because sometimes it's that young firehead that has all the right intentions, is speaking truth to power.
Correct.
But it's like, please think about what we're doing here. There's ways we can incorporate what you're doing so we are in that sandwich generation in a way where it's kind of like, and sometimes I trip when I think about it, because I'm like, wow, I am in this position now. I, for the longest time, was a young cat. Now I'm like, oh, wow, my daughter, perfect example. She, when the riots were taking place years ago and they were downtown, my daughter was 16, 17, and she called me at work crying, and she was like, I'm going downtown and I'm protesting. And in one hand, I was proud of her, and on the other hand I was like, don't you fucking go downtown, because
we saw what happened to some of the, I know,
you see what I'm saying? So, and it's this, like you mentioned earlier, it's this juggling act of, and what pisses me off is like, sometimes I'm like, yo, I just want to do what I want to do, but why am I embracing so much shit that a lot of other people don't have to fucking deal with? You see what I'm saying? I can easily turn a blind eye to it, but it don't sit well with me.
Right.
But really, I just want to follow my passion. I just want to go to work. I just want to do what everybody else is doing. But you have to deal with these hurdles and these small little micro situations that seem micro, but really they resonate so deeply with us because we've experienced it so many times throughout our life. Yeah. I appreciate this conversation, by the way.
I do too. Yeah. I mean, I think we discount the amount of energy it takes to do that too.
1000%.
Constantly.
Yeah.
And going back to the red lipstick thing, I was always made fun of when I was younger, growing up in white community, that my lips were too big.
Oh, wow.
But now they're trendy.
And
so are thick eyebrows. I got made fun of for my eyebrows, and I'm like, okay, I'm finally on trend. But this whole thing, it's a silly, stupid act in so many ways. But for me, and even I've been self-conscious. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm wearing red lipstick. I hope somebody, I don't even know what I think people are going to think of me. But it's like this thing that I'm putting myself out there in a way that, like I said before, it's very different than trying to make people, plucking my eyebrows thin, straightening my hair, and wearing Birkenstocks.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I looked kind of ridiculous when I did that.
Right.
But it feels more risky in an odd way. So
when
anyway.
I grew up, I still am, but I was a huge fan of Michael J. Fox. I was a big fan of Back to the Future. I remember being
who wasn't? Come
right. I remember being a kid,
the flux capacitor,
and not understanding why my hair.
Yes.
Because I'd always, he'd always run his fingers through his hair, and I would always try to brush my hair. I wanted my hair to to look like
Right.
his. And I was always jealous of all the white kids that had hair like
Yes.
that.
Or do you remember sun-in? Remember when people would do sun-in?
No.
Did your people but people would put, it was like the spray, I remember in middle school, that it could like, it would make your hair lighter when
Oh,
you
okay,
like
yeah,
have
yeah. I didn't
highlights
know it was
when you go
called
in the
that.
sun. It was, well, there was, I mean, I'm sure there are other brands, but everybody would do sun-in and I couldn't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember getting my
Stupid
tits
little
frosted.
things like that. Yeah.
And my mom was like, "What is that?" And it was in college. And I remember this, you don't see it when you're in the moment. But I remember
Right.
getting it done, and it was a girl that was pulling my hair through the cap, and she was like, "This is really difficult with your hair," and I was like, "Why?" Because you're doing it to everybody else. But you see what I'm saying? But it's like the things that you're doing,
Yeah.
instead of embracing who you are, but what you're seeing is the opposite. And now my son, who's 17, he has hair like Michael J. Fox.
Isn't that funny?
And so it's kind of like, I'll talk to him and I'm like, it's funny, when I was a kid, I wanted hair like you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm okay now. I love
But you
my
don't
hair.
realize how all those
Right.
things, how all of the beauty standards and whatever else, what's cool, what's not, just is oppressive, truly.
Right.
And I mean, that is how it is in the fitness world too. How it is for women, especially in the fitness world. It's like you have to, in order to go to boutique fitness, this is a huge thing that I've come up against at Move It, is like, how can I help Black and brown people to understand that this is a space for them as well?
Okay, yeah.
It's not just for thin white privileged women.
Right.
And also, how can I make sure those thin white privileged women know this is also a space for them? They kind of always see it that way. But like, the more I've stepped into my Latinidad and, talked about things more openly and things like that, I found the country club set getting a little like, maybe we don't. I remember my dad and my mom both saying to me, I think it's great that you're talking about Black Lives Matter and the da-da-da-da-da and that you're Latino, whatever. But like, you might want to scale back a little bit, because I don't know if your clients, like, I think some people, some of the white people don't feel like it's a place for them anymore now. And I was like, fuck that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But also there are real effects on your business.
Right. Because a lot of people will say, I came here for this, not the politics.
Yes.
And it's like, but the politics affect my life.
Yeah. And I'm not playing that anymore.
Right.
I mean, again, it's tricky and we all have to navigate it. But I kind of got to this point, especially during COVID too, where I was just like, if I'm going to have my own business, like, I'm going to fucking run it the way I want. And if that means I'm talking about racial stuff, that means I'm talking about racial stuff. If that means that, we sometimes post political shit, like, if that means I don't want Trump to be president, well, you know what I mean? Like,
but you're posting
what is the point?
But you're
what is the
posting
point
it
otherwise?
with an educated stance.
Yeah.
It's not like you're just flapping at the mouth and not having any substance behind what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I feel like even when people don't want to hear it, when you have the stance that you have, where it comes with like, no, I'm coming from an educated stance, I know this, that, and the third, you can't really, nobody can stop you.
Yeah.
You're still dealing with the pressure and the setback, but I commend you for that, because you have the platform, even though it's not meant for that. But you're in a position, because you're a Latina woman, you're in a position where you have to speak up about it, and you have this platform, and you're using it, and you're doing it beautifully, because I have seen the posts, and it's not like you're just rambling. You have a message, you stand by it, and it's I keep saying educated, because I remember my mom always telling me, like, you got to get your education, because nobody will take you seriously, especially because you're Puerto Rican. Get educated. Now, look, I went to college for 1 year and I dropped out, but I've always felt that I was educated.
Yes.
I've always done research. I've always read things. I've always articulated
It's the way
myself
you're
very well.
thinking and-
Right. And
Approaching things,
And that was the whole, like, you sound white. So I've learned now as I get older, like, no, I just know what the fuck I'm talking about. Let me get back to you. When we talked about ballet, you talked about ballet earlier. And I was unaware obviously I don't know nothing about ballet, but I didn't realize it was that cutthroat and toxic.
Yeah.
So when you say that you feel that some of that has kind of shaped you to deal with and prepare with situations that can be somewhat harsh and toxic, do you look back at that experience with some gratitude or some resentment? I mean, what exactly happened that pushed you away?
So, I mean, the way that I like to describe the ballet world to people who, and I'm talking about like professional ballet world, like professional training, not like, going to a recital studio where it's like recreational and fun and life-giving or whatever. Okay. We're talking like you're trying to pursue a professional career. I always say it's kind of like what you understand of gymnastics, figure skating, and modeling, but without as much money and fame.
Okay. Got you.
Because especially gymnastics and figure skating, because you have such a short window of time that you can really perform, right? Now, Simone Biles, like a lot of the, other athletes are extending the life of how they can perform at an elite level, but ballet is similar. I mean, I decided when I was 6, but like I wasn't the only one of my friends who was that young when they decided. I went away for the full summer, starting at age 11 to train. And I felt like I still wasn't doing enough because I wasn't going to a boarding school for ballet until I was just turned 16. And I felt like I was way too old. Like that's how intense it is.
Wow.
And, dance in and of itself is such an all-encompassing art form. It is, it engages your mind, it engages your body, it engages your spirit, your heart, you know what I mean? So for me, the passion, the reason why I was willing to do all of that hard work and have bloody feet and, all the other stuff was because I loved it so much.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are so many people, just like in gymnastics and figure skating. I always relate it to that because people understand that with Olympics and stuff. There are so many people who want to do it. Yeah. Believe it or not, professionally, even though it's shitty pay. It kills your body, like there's all this stuff, but if you're a dancer, you just can't get enough of it. You know what I mean? And the ballet world specifically is so, it's so restrictive in how you can look. And, it's such a really hard technique that they're just built-in limitations, right? So I was always thin, but I was always muscular. So like from the time I was probably 8 years old, I felt like I was bigger than everyone else. Now I am a fully curvy Latina woman, but I was not when I was 8. I mean, and I look back at pictures, I'm like, oh my God, like I had no fat on my body. I just had lean muscle. Like how could I feel that way about myself? And, you feel that way about yourself, and then you're also looking to, it's an individual sport, right? It's an individual art form like figure skating and gymnastics. So you're constantly, it's all up to you how hard you work and how well you can perform. Whereas with a team sport, it's up to you to do your part. Yeah. But you're working together to accomplish a shared goal. Gotcha. In ballet, you're friends, the only other people who understand what you're going through, are also your biggest competition. So that makes for some really weird, fucked up relationships too. Yeah. Yeah.
I never thought about that.
Oh, yeah. And then on top of that, you're waiting for a teacher to pay attention to you. And usually the way that someone thinks you have potential is if they are giving you corrections. That's what we call them, corrections. Okay. It's not positive feedback. And it's very rare, and things are starting to change because like people my age are now like teaching and stuff. But, it's never, I don't know how to say it, but it's truly based on negative reinforcement. You know what I mean? It's like, you got to do this, you got to do that. Some teachers deliver it differently, but it's always about how can you make it better? Oh, that was great. Let's do it better. Let's see if you can do it this way next time. It's, go straight into the correction. You know what I mean? It's correction. And you start to crave that, like, it's a good thing if someone's critiquing me.
Yeah. Wow.
So I don't even know how that relates to stuff other than I have had a lot of like, and what ended up happening to me, I should say, is like the year before I went away to school, I was supposed to go when I had just turned 15, and my parents were like, "Oh, you're a little young." And I had been told by like you hear this story all the time, by like the closest thing I had to a mentor teacher who was a white male. That, well, actually he told my mom, well, if she could just lose 10 pounds, it'd be great. You know, like I was like 100 and I don't know, maybe 115 pounds. I'm 5'7". You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so my mom told me that. And, you know, my disordered eating became really disordered. So the year leading up to going away to school, I was, you know, I was not healthy. I was not healthy, and dealing with, you know, a lot of like over exercising, compulsive exercising. And, you know, I just remember at one point I would eat, like I would wake up at 6, I would work out for an hour. I would have 5 grapes a day and 3 pieces of popcorn. Like that was my summer leading up to going.
3 grapes?
5 grapes.
5 grapes.
I don't know why it was 5 grapes.
You were splurging.
You know what I mean?
You 3.
And so like, and I was working out and training, you know, so, and at the same time, I started getting like better roles and stuff.
Okay.
You know, and I was also hitting my stride because I was training a lot, whatever, you know, it might not have all had to do with the weight. But the point is I wasn't in a very healthy state when I went away. And, you know, that school in particular, and most performing arts high schools, I'll just speak for ballet, are about this like, push you until you break, and whoever's left standing is the one who can actually make it in this world. But they're doing this to teenagers, man.
I was about to say, you were so young.
Teenagers. And where I was, you know, it was also, there was a college on campus, an arts, this is like a very highly rated, it's now a part of the UNC system. Well, it's always been a part of the UNC system, but now it's like, yeah, more recognized. And, you know, they've had a ton of famous actors come out of the school. They've had a lot of successful filmmakers and things like that. It was not a good idea to have when I was there, I still remember there were 200 high school students on campus and 800 college students. High schoolers were not allowed to have cars. So the only way to get off campus was if you were friends with a college student or you took a cab. Remember cabs?
Yeah, wow.
And we're in the middle, you know, there wasn't much else around where we were in North Carolina. And so it made for a very, you know, and plus it's all artists.
Yeah.
So it's like a perfect storm of hormones and drug use. You know, this was like when raves were happening. Like, I'm so lucky that I am like, have my wits about me, because so I remember seeing, I mean, people freak me out. Like, I remember people with acid and ecstasy and stuff, like roaming around the hallways. Like, it was some messed up shit.
Absolutely.
And I think about that now, especially as a parent, and I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, that was egregious, what happened there. And you know, the most beautiful people on campus were the high school ballet dancers and the college drama boys. So that also made for some really interesting dynamics that were very unhealthy, you know? And I mean, before I went there, I had never, like, I was so disciplined and I had never even like had a drink. And by the time I left, I was just like a wreck.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? And it did a lot of damage. And, you know, I almost quit then. And anyway, then I got the contract with the company. But the point is, it definitely made me resilient, but I have had a hard time reconciling, like, how all of that happened and the wrongness of it and my inability to, like, stop it from happening to other people. There are a lot of things like that in my life where I'm like, oh, I'm a statistic there. Oh, I'm a statistic there. But like, it's good to know that, but it's also just like, it kind of pisses me off in a way where I'm like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do about it? What can I do? I wasn't able to address it then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's there. It's, as someone who is motivated and go getter, whatever, it's really annoying to look back on things and feel like I wish I could have not even stopped it from happening to me, but just like fucking like gotten like had somebody else pay a consequence.
Yeah.
Because I feel like so much of what I have gone through, I still deal with it on a daily basis. I still, regardless of like, empowering others, and really, that's why I never, ever, ever have ever talked about weight loss. Even when I was very thin, and I was healthy, but I was still probably like not eating enough. But like towards the beginning of my fitness teaching career, before I had kids, and all I did was like work out. It was really nice. But anyway, I still refused to make it about weight loss. And philosophically, I actually wrote a manifesto about this in 2018. It was before pandemic, because my body was edited in an ad for a local publication, and it made my waist thinner. And at this point I was probably 40 pounds lighter. So it didn't really need to happen. And so I wrote this whole thing, and basically I'm fundamentally opposed to the industry, the fitness industry, and the world, obviously, in general, sending this message to women that they need to be smaller. I'm like, how fitting is that? Who does it benefit for women to constantly be obsessed with literally and figuratively making themselves smaller? Who stands to benefit from that? And also, it's like the Barbie movie, when they forget their identities or whatever, and oh, I was a Nobel Prize winner, and now I'm just like serving this guy. I don't know if you didn't see it.
No, I didn't see it.
That'll be like 3 more episodes. But the point is, it's like, so I just see it. It's like, it's this pervasive attitude of like, it's like we become so obsessed with it as women, and also with making each other smaller, with tearing each other down. And I'm like, the only people that benefit from that, guess what? They're not women. They are not the people that are birthing other human beings. They are not the people who, are really being entrusted with carrying on the next, generation. And there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
So that's a thing that I've always stood by as a business owner and have grown to, after having 2 kids and pandemic and everything, kind of now perimenopause. I'm like, oh my God, can we just like, it's really hard to be a woman. I mean, we're amazing and powerful and blah, blah, blah. But sometimes I'm like, damn, like, come on.
Yeah.
But, I've grown to, even though I've always had that consistent message, I've grown to understand it in deeper ways.
Yeah.
Throughout this process. And it's interesting to see, how that affects the ethos of the studio, how that affects our clients and teachers. And, I'm hoping, and I do hear this a lot, like that the studio is the happy place for our clients and teachers too. And it's the place where, we've had people, this is an advertisement for the studio, but this is the thing that kind of keeps me going. Go to moveitstudio.com.
There we go.
This is where I start my pitch. Are you ready? Help me.
I'm putting it on the bottom of the screen. It'll be in flashing lights.
Yeah, it's just like the ticker tape at the bottom. moveitstudio.com. But I am the only, as far as I know, we are the only woman of color owned fitness studio.
There we go.
In Lancaster and really the region. Now they're just in York. They're just opened up a Black woman owner opened up a yoga studio. But like I literally just realized that. I never thought of that.
Okay.
And I was like, oh yeah, like I'm looking around. I'm like, there are no women studios. Now there's starting to be some more instructors and stuff, which is amazing, but there are no, other studio owners right now. So hopefully there will be more. But the thing that really like kind of keeps me going is when I hear, and this has always been consistent no matter what our clientele looks like, right? And where we were based, that Move It and what we offer there, it is an amazing workout and it does feel good. But what people come to me and tell me is, this is what helped me get through my husband dying. We've had multiple people. This is what helped me to get through postpartum depression. This is what helped me to get through divorce. This is what helped me to get back in touch with my body after like having a major like weight loss journey. It's those like life-defining moments. This is what helped me to get through COVID.
Yeah.
Don't close, Marie. We need you. And I'm like, girl, I'm barely hanging on over here. Like, I'm trying, but I can't really give you much more, okay? I've given you my youth and beauty. I have nothing left. Anyway, and that's not even getting into my kids. But, that's the thing, right? And so, again, though, it's like what you're trying to do, what you are doing, not what you're trying to do, what you are doing with your podcast and changing people's lives and speaking to people's hearts and just being real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It does have an impact. And sometimes, as a business owner, though, it can be hard for me to balance that amazing impact that I truly value more than anything with, okay, I have a lot of debt now.
Yeah.
I went into pandemic only having, but I remember I took out a $10,000 loan and I thought I was going to poop my pants. Now I joke that the SBA is my angel investor. Silent partner.
That's a nice way to put it.
And a few other credit card companies. You know what I mean? But I'm like, it's the real deal.
Yeah.
And not again, people don't want to hear it. So when I did my crowdfunding campaign again last year, I felt like I was speaking into the void. I was so vulnerable and I was almost like embarrassed to ask for help again, because I fucking hate asking for help in any way. But I was like, okay, this was my last ditch effort. Like, I need to start asking people for money for the studio. Like, I know if we are a viable business, we shouldn't have to fundraise, right? But like, also, here's the reality.
It is, right?
Here's the reality. And, it was swallowing my pride. And I think there was a part of me that thought that, like, if I finally come out of the closet and let people know what's really happening behind the scenes, the money will come pouring in and we'll just, I'll be able to erase my debt or at least regularly pay my bills and da, right? And what happened was sort of like everybody's like, what the hell? You know what I mean? Like,
gotcha.
A lot of people did support and share, and I am so appreciative of all of that. And I think there was a little bit of a thing like, well, we don't really want to hear about that. And also, like, should we give you money? Because are you just going to be closing anyway?
Wow.
And I do think there is a racial element to that. And I also think there's an element to, like, if you always kind of put yourself out there as this like strong person or whatever, people don't know what to do. It's like when mom has a breakdown and you're like, oh fuck, we are screwed now because like she's the one holding all this shit together.
Right.
Like, I don't know what to do now.
Right.
And it's not, I mean, not to elevate my influence, but like it kind of felt like that a little bit where I was like, no, literally, like why, come on. Like, I don't know how else to say it. And
Throw me a bone here.
Yeah. And I sort of felt like people still didn't get it because like I had mascara on and like my hair was done or whatever. Or I wasn't like bawling.
Right. You didn't look like somebody that needed the help. And it's all, that just goes back to like.
It goes back to the whole thing. Because I'm not supposed to look like somebody who needs help.
No, right.
So anyway, it's been an interesting journey. I am really looking forward to seeing how things pan out. I still don't know how they're going to, but we have really good energy behind the studio. And really, I think, this whole thing, I think that people actually believe me, even if maybe they did before, I don't know. But I feel like I have remained consistent in like who I am and what I believe in, and not veered away from that. I'm really proud of that.
Yeah.
I know there are other local businesses and studios that have like, you know, like hired Black people to like be in their ads or whatever it is. And it is what it is. Like, I'm not, you know, we all do our thing, right?
I got you.
But, or like hired Black people to like appear in their business so it looks like they're embracing diversity. And let me tell you, I thought I had failed because I still don't have a lot of Black and brown people in my studio, you know?
Yeah.
And one thing I realized though too is we are one small studio in Lancaster City, the only studio owned by a Latino woman, right? A Latino at all.
Yeah.
And in this boutique industry that is very white and very privileged, like I can only do, not to excuse it at all, but I can only do what I could do and trust that if I continue to put out the energy and continue to speak the truth, it's having the impact it needs to have.
Right.
It might not automatically translate to like, oh, we are the destination for like, I think I thought in my mind, I was like, if people, like if I get some street cred, like, you know, then like the Black and brown community will support me and like, you know, understand that this truly is a place for them. And, you know, I think there's some of that. And it's also just like, it's where you feel comfortable and where you feel you belong. For me, that isn't a dance studio. That's very rare for a lot of Black and brown people.
Yeah, and I dig it. It's an interesting position to find yourself in, where you're grateful that you have this problem, but it's also frustrating that you can't grow it the way everybody has like a passion, a dream.
Yeah.
And you're fulfilling yours. But then it comes with different elements that, you know, well, just get back. You can do it. You're already doing this. There's so much more going on behind the scenes. And it's difficult when you're not willing to sell out and be like, well, let me change. Let me fake the funk here and do it to appeal. I think that says a lot, though, that you're willing to hold on to your integrity and who you are. That's the backbone of most Black and brown people, is not compromising my integrity.
Yeah.
Because especially generations before, considering what we've all been through, that's all we have is our fucking integrity, our name. How you look at me and how you perceive me means everything to me. And so I would look at it as there's so many people that have come through your doors and that you've met, that I can't imagine that was for naught. You see what I'm saying?
I agree.
And that the door swings both ways. And what comes in one way, something leaves, but other things come in.
Yeah,
I believe in
I
things
love
like
that.
that. I really
that.
do. I really do. You know, so I'm listening to what you're saying, and I don't have a business, so I can't relate, but I can completely I dig it, what you're saying. And it's hard to hear that you've gone through so much and you've gotten so far, but it's almost like, yeah, but guess what? I'm still fucking dealing with this, that, and the third. It's like, well, when do you celebrate? You know what I mean? Like, when do you finally go, aha?
I know.
It sucks, but fuck, man, you're doing something pretty fucking cool. I think the people that you're meeting and the lives that you're touching, and like you said, people are finding some closure through it. Yeah. That I can't imagine that just does not go by the wayside with people that you're influencing.
It's true. And I do feel that, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to do it. And, you know, whenever I lead teacher trainings, I'm always like, you know, people are trusting us with their bodies. Yeah. That is huge. They're coming in here, they're doing something they might be uncomfortable doing. And vulnerable. And they're listening, and they're here. And we have the privilege of them trusting us with that. And that's a really beautiful thing. And I think with regard to like all of the turmoil that I experienced in the dance world, it's a very beautiful and therapeutic thing for me to be able to offer the really beautiful and healing parts of movement and dance. It's kind of like flipping it all around and being like, there's a reason why. And maybe people don't even a lot of people probably don't even understand. I don't share my story a lot like this.
Gotcha. Cool. So this is rare.
Yeah. Uncut. No, I don't, because there's a lot. And it's also just like, yeah, there are parts of it I'm not proud of. And there's, it's like, I don't want to be a fucking statistic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just want to like do my thing, like you said, and like be successful and like not be continuously having to deal with this bullshit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there is part of this, like, I think why I keep coming back to dance and movement. And I'm actually performing this week for the first time since I had my first daughter. I only performed once. So it's been a long time.
Wow.
She just turned 8, and I choreographed a piece and created a work as well. And I'm starting to do more of that. And so this is the idea. I think what's happening is it's this very real way of like, both within my own body, but in offering what we offer at the studio, turning some of that stuff the ugly stuff that I went to into something beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so awesome. Where are you performing, can you say?
Yeah, it's with Grant Street Dance Company. It's an intergenerational modern dance company. They've always, since I opened, they've rehearsed at the studio, and, they give me like a little, like $10 an hour or something so like that. Cool. But, they were my dance community that I found when I first moved here when I was 22 and really struggling and not knowing, again, yet another identity crisis, not knowing what to do with my life. They have been a really grounding presence, and they are celebrating 25 years. Okay. It's actually at like a private property. It's a site-specific piece.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm doing that. And then I also am dipping into my Latina side and am performing at One World Festival. Okay. One of my teachers, Jasmine Pantoja, I met her at One World last year. She was in charge of the whole Latin dance section, and I was like, where do you teach? You need to come to me, blah blah blah. Yeah. So now she's like on the team, and so this year she's doing that section again and has been teaching salsa at the studio. And I was like, I would really love to do that, but I work at the community foundation and that's extra give day and blah 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 blah. And then right, I'm like, I work that day. I work 24 hours straight, but Fran actually was like, why don't you just audition? Like, why don't you? And, Jasmine's like, you don't need to audition. I would love to have you in it. And so I talked to people at the Community Foundation. They're like, that's a beautiful way of like showing up in all the elements 1,000%. Of who you are on this day. And we 100% support you doing that. Cool. So I'm really excited about that because I've never performed salsa, and yeah, it's going to be fun.
Well, good for you. That's so cool to hear. Especially after some time not dancing, getting back to it.
Yeah. And it's, it's putting myself out there in a different way because, I still have my own self-judgment and things. Sure. And it's really purely because I love it now and it's still in my body. So
awesome. Awesome.
I might not be able to walk after that. We'll see.
That's everything. My wife and I hosted a party. I stood there grilling for 4 hours. I had a hard time walking the next day.
What happened to my knees? This was supposed to be fun.
You're the only person I told outside my whole family. I fucking felt I was working out. The hell
I know. I'm telling you. I mean, I teach fitness, and I have this studio and all of that. And we just, ballet is really hard on your body, but we just traveled to Colombia for a wedding. My dear friend was getting married to a guy from Colombia, and his family still lives down there. And just like on the flight, I could barely walk after because my knees were so stiff.
Yeah.
You can edit that part out. And I was telling Andrew, I'm like, Andrew, I don't know what's happening. Like, my knees really hurt, but
like
we were just
walking
sitting
like RoboCop.
I was like, can you help me? And of course, it was like a month before my 41st birthday. So I was like, it's happening.
There you
like,
go, right?
The joints are giving out.
What do I got to drink for my joints?
Yeah.
You mentioned briefly, real quick, if you don't mind, your children. You have 2 or 3?
Yes,
okay,
I have 2 children, Paloma
Okay.
and Raphael with an F.
Okay.
They are both blue-eyed.
Look at that. Any blue
And
eyes in your...
I married a white guy.
There you go.
And my mom has blue eyes and her family has blue eyes. So I thought the dark genes would win out, but my mom's like, listen, girl, I tried to help you out with the gene pool by giving you that nice skin and marrying a Latino. You made your own choices. My kids are beautiful and amazing. And so is my husband. And I'm really lucky to be their mom.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love... one of the things that I love about doing the podcast and learning about everybody's journey, when people are doing what they're doing, the ups and downs, and there's a family involved, I relate to it. You know,
Oh my God.
It's like, especially when you have somebody that's, supporting you and backing you up, and they have to endure a lot of the emotional distress, the good times, but also like that. Where nobody sees, and so
the anxiety attacks.
Yeah, oh my God, anxiety attacks.
We don't need to go into detail, but
my wife is so good with my anxiety, where it's just like
it's like, it's just another.
Are you okay? Sometimes that I don't have it here now. We have it's in the foyer now, but it's a green chair. I used to sit in that corner, and it's sometimes things would get. Too many people start talking at the same time, and I can't concentrate. I have to walk away and sit here, and she'd walk in and she'd go, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "I'm okay. I just need a couple minutes." And it's like I don't have to worry about her.
She gets it.
Holding it against me, like, you're always busy, and then when you're with the family, the only time my wife put me in check, and I'm grateful for her, is I have a tendency of when people start telling me something, I'm like, just get to it. Get to it, right?
Yeah.
And she was telling me a story, and I was kind of
like,
losing my.
Give me the summary.
I was just kind of like, I think she could tell that I was losing, and she said, I don't ever say anything, but how is it you can have an interview with somebody for 2 hours? Oh my God, is she? And I had nothing to say.
You're like,
it was like the only reason why I appreciated what she said is because she's been so supportive that when she finally said something, I had to really. So the reason why I bring all that up is because like doing what you're doing and having a family and I can relate to that. So I always like to kind of like just get the vibes and I'm appreciative. Thank you very much for stopping in and this was so much. This is a lot that I love to talk about. I don't really get to talk about it too often, is like the dynamics of what Black and brown people go through, but in different levels. And obviously I thought the whole time you were from Lancaster. I didn't realize that you were from Michigan.
No.
So that's a dope.
Yeah, and then next time, I mean, I'm not inviting myself back.
No, please.
But next time we'll talk about when I was a doula over COVID.
Holy hell. How did we miss that?
I did the Diversifying Doulas program with Patients Are Waiting.
Look at that. Yeah.
And what I saw, because we were supporting specifically Black and Latinx women.
Okay.
So we'll do that next time.
Next time, absolutely. I want to have to schedule that. One of the things I want to do is I like to pose a question to my guests. Usually I used to be like, let's talk about what your plan is, but I'm trying to do something different this season. So nothing too drastic, but considering what we talked about, what would be some suggestions or maybe some advice you would give to not just a woman of color, but anybody of color, maybe especially a woman of color, because I would think that there's so much more that women of color have to deal with than men, that are finding themselves in a position where they're compromising who they are. Do you have any suggestions for somebody?
That is a very good question.
You mentioned that you didn't have any. Your mom said you didn't have anybody.
Yeah,
Like
I
a
think,
mentor.
yeah, I think that to me, one thing that I have really intentionally tried to figure out how to create for myself, and it's not all local. One of the good things about COVID is like connecting virtually with other people who live in other areas, and that's been really helpful for me. So I do I'm a member at this meditation and yoga studio in Brooklyn, and it's
Cool.
all Black and brown teachers. So I think one thing for me, what I would recommend is what I have really intentionally tried to curate in the past however many years is people who look like me, who are doing things that I respect, whether I have a personal connection with them or not. Kind of finding those people first of all, so that like just like you said, like the Michael J. Fox hair, like your hair is never going to be like Michael J. Fox's.
Yeah.
And if that's the only model you have, like what are you going to do? You know what I mean? So that's one thing. And then the other thing is actually having like relationships with people who are going through similar things to you. For me, that's like other first gen people, like whether they're, like I have Indian friends. My one like dearest friend is half Egyptian, half Polish, but we look like we could be sisters. She grew up in Manhattan, so her racial identity wasn't even really, she's like, girl, if you lived in New York, like nobody would say anything. Like, white, she's like, you're white passing. And I'm like, damn it, would you stop? I'm trying to figure out how to rectify all of these things. But to have people that you can actually let down your guard with in a different way. I didn't realize that I like very, very rarely, like pre-pandemic, talked to any of my white friends about race.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And even about like, and it wasn't even, it's different. It's just different.
It is.
I process with my mom who is white. I process, there were some people I could talk to about it, but I just never really, I just did my thing, So I think the biggest piece of advice is really finding people who resonate with your journey.
Yeah, there you go.
You like how I tied that in? Season 3. Wherever you get your podcasts, download. Follow me now.
Now I put all the podcast logos.
We're open for sponsorships.
Yes.
Also, Move It Studio is. Okay, anyway.
Yeah, there we go.
No, but yeah, like finding people who actually resonate with your journey, whatever that looks like. But I do think it's really important. And one of the things that was unfortunate in my upbringing is having other people who look like you. You know what I mean? That sounds, I don't know how it sounds. I know people might take it one way or another, but I think it's important to have close relationships with people who can understand your racialized experience. Just like it's important for, women to have women friends. It's hard. Just like it's important for men to have male friends. It's not like it needs to all be separate, but I think for me, like I was almost to the opposite extreme where like at one point, like all of the people I was closest to were like white straight men. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because I was like, the white girls are mean to me. The white guys like me. the black, like I'm not even around Black and Latino women. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I dig it.
And then I was like, this is not like working. So I think it's finding that community, whatever that looks like for you. And, I think if you're compromising, it all has to do with coming back to your center and knowing what that is. And I think even though it's really hard to do that work, that is what we are all here for. And I really, truly believe that especially, the Black and brown community, I feel like that is part of all of our purpose.
Right.
And responsibility to whatever that means for you, whether it's doing genealogy or learning Spanish or you know what I mean, but to really understand where you came from and understand what, you know, you need to do to stay true to that.
Right. And to co-sign what you're saying, I would also add that I think that most healthiest thing for anybody is to understand that it's okay to normalize this type of conversation.
Yeah.
And that
that's
it
good.
doesn't mean that, because I have white friends that get it.
Yes.
I have
100%
white coworkers
same.
that would come to me and say, yeah, I didn't look at it the way that you broke it down, but I'm appreciative because of what you said. Now I look at things differently. And I feel like that's the game, is like, this is a normal conversation to have. When we talk about these experiences, it's not saying like all white people don't have a clue. It's saying,
Right.
no, it's not. How are you supposed to understand? But when we're trying to explain it to you, allow us.
Yes.
And don't say that this conversation, we can't have conversations like this. We can't bring up, you're right.
You think you're uncomfortable? How you think I feel every day?
Right,
Sorry.
right. No, but
But
it's
also,
the
there are
conditioning.
white people who get it, like even like my mom, for example. You know what I mean? Who like grew
1000%,
up in what, you know, white rural working class Michigan, and, you know, still like she's like kind of the outlier, and my husband's kind of the outlier in his
Yeah.
family, you know, and they both see things that sometimes, like I said, I don't even see because I'm just so used to having to deal with it.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
is, yes, 100%. Like, it is tricky to have these conversations, and it's tricky. I know, like, I've talked a lot, like my husband, you know, he was the first one in his family to graduate from college. And he's like, I understand white privilege. And like, my grandparents were minors. And I'm the first one, like my parent, you know, my dad was in the military out of necessity.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, that's different. That's economic privilege, right? But it's like, it's just an interesting, there is a lot of, you know, gray area, but I think the most important thing, and I think it's hilarious that like there are so many trainings on this now, is like, look at someone else as a human being. That's all.
Right. Right. And that's where like the empathy comes in. Like, I don't understand it, but I have to take I would have to take your word that you're being honest with what you're telling me. And if that's the case, then allow me to learn from, and I feel like when people get that experience, then the guard will come down.
Yeah.
And for the most part, like I can't speak for everybody.
Right.
I can't speak for all black and brown people.
Yeah.
But in my experience, it's been let me tell you something. It's one for every like 10 people you talk to.
Yes.
You get one that
You
will
lose
listen
some
to you.
people.
It's not
You
it's not
lose
easy.
some people. You lose some people. You do, but then it also clarifies things. So the interesting thing about that is that this bridge building training I'm going through, it's all research based, and it's out of UCLA, and it's led by like a Latino man and a black woman. But one of the things that they found in some study was that in cases where so much of the dialogue in education has been in like the racial equity sphere and just bridge building in general, whatever, has been geared towards white folks who can't seem to understand that other people have had a different experience from them. Okay, right? So a lot of the training is about like perspective taking is what they call it. So it's like, think of yourself from this perspective, blah, 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 blah. So in the trainings, what they found is there is not a statistical like advantage or improvement in bridge building ability or in personal experience when black and brown people are asked to do perspective taking, because they do it all the time.
Right.
But where they show like the statistical advantage and whatever, what is actually effective is when black and brown people, or really what they say, it's because it's not all racially based. So it's like the group, you know, sometimes they call it the out group, or like whatever group has less power, we'll say, quote unquote, in the situation, when they are able to do perspective giving. Like you said, when they're able to share,
Yeah.
that's when they see the improvement.
Right.
So that is 100% like backed up by the research and everything too. And I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
it is such a different, it's scary for me to share with someone who couldn't understand my racialized experience or whatever. But I feel a lot better when I can.
Yeah.
And when I'm given the space to do that, it makes a huge difference.
Well, even in the inner cities across America, where the black and brown and white kids grow up together, there's way more of a unionized understanding, a familiarity, if you will, an empathetic approach, where it's almost like, no, I know I'm white, but like I dig what's going on here.
Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah.
And that just goes, that's just like, you gotta like sharing, understanding, getting involved, and that's a lot easier said than done. But I'm always commending and appreciative of people that really spearhead any type of program, any type of even what we're doing now. We're having a conversation about it. It's important because, like I said, 1 out of 10 will listen to it and go, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
So, Marie, thank you so much. This has been an
Thank
awesome
you.
conversation.
Yeah.
And you did great. You were
Good.
perfect. You
I'll
didn't
be
seem
back,
nervous.
obviously. MoveItStudio.com.
That's all. You're a natural. You gotta get a podcast.
I mean, give me a freaking microphone. I mean, you should see me if a microphone in a stage.
There we go. There we go.
I will wax poetic. But no, thank you. Thank you for listening and for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad this worked out.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's it.
Okay.